what it was like to have people come to the land prior to the English, and it had not been such a great experience. But once they're here, the Indians see a trading opportunity, and they take advantage of that. At that time, a mighty Indian chief was paramount here. His name was Chief Wuntasanaka. He later became known as Chief Powhatan. Why Powhatan? Because that's the area where he was from. Chief Powhatan had some 14,000 Indians underneath him. They ranged all the way up to Washington, D.C., to Richmond, to the borders of North Carolina. Chief Powhatan had 32-plus tribes underneath him. He started out with only 6. 6 he had inherited from his mother. The Powhatans inherit through the mother line, the matrilineal line. The rest of the tribes he acquired through negotiation, warfare, and marriage. The English wrote that Chief Powhatan had over 100 wives. So it would behoove him to marry into a tribe because that becomes part of his entourage. Now you men, if you were Powhatans back then and you were good hunters and you could afford to feed more than one wife, you had the option of taking more than one wife. But if you weren't a good hunter, your poor wife would not be wearing buckskin. She'd be running around in grassland. So hopefully you'd be a good hunter. Now, naturally having over 100 wives, Chief Powhatan had many, many daughters. Who do you think his favorite daughter was?
Pocahontas.
Pocahontas, yes. And who did Pocahontas marry?
John Ross.
John Ross. Very good group. She did not marry John Smith like Walt Disney would have us believe. And you know they are still writing some children's books today having John Smith and Pocahontas getting married. But she marries John Ross. As a matter of fact, they got married in a church like we've reproduced in our fort in 1614. It was the first recorded marriage between an Indian person and a white person back then. And by the way, if you hear me using the term Indian, the present-day descendants prefer that, so I'm not being derogatory to the Indians. I know in some areas it's a no-no, but you will hear me say it. Now, John Smith was the ripe old age of 28 when he came here. How old do you think Pocahontas was at that time?
Teenager.
Okay, I'm looking around here. Meeny, miny, mo. I think I'm going to pick on you with the red shirt. How old are you? 9? Okay, how about you? 10. Okay, all right. That was my choice. Okay, she was your age. Pocahontas was 10 years old. Just a year older than you.
I was 10.
Oh, you said 10. I thought you said 9. Okay, good. I was right. All right, 2 10-year-olds. All right, do you know each other? Okay, well, welcome. Pocahontas and John Smith had a great relationship, but it was a father-daughter relationship. Now today, when we want to learn more about the Powhatans, it can be very difficult because they didn't have a written language, didn't have an alphabet. They never wrote anything down. So how can we learn about them? We have to go to what we call our primary sources. And one of the primary sources we learn from are artifacts, like what we find out in historic Jamestown. Another primary source we learn from our writings. In this case, it's what the English wrote. But of course, it's subjective. It's what they chose to write about. For instance, when John Smith comes here, he's not only a military man, he's a surveyor, but he wrote many, many notes and writings that we learn from. But do you think in his stories John Smith ever depicted himself as anything less than a hero? So we have to learn the other side of John Smith from what other Englishmen wrote. And a third primary source we learn from are paintings. Case in point over there, that dance space circle. We learn about that from a painting by a man by the name of John White. He was also the former governor of the lost colony of Roanoke, which is a whole wonderful story in itself. But John White was also a fine painter of his day, more specifically watercolors. As a matter of fact, they used to take his paintings of the New World back in England and make woodcuts out of them. In many ways, he was sort of like a public relations person for Virginia, because when you look at his paintings, all the Indians have smiling faces. He wants people to come to Virginia. When he was down in Secondhand in 1585 with the Raleigh expedition, he noticed Indians dancing around the circle like that, and he painted it. And it is called the dance space circle. But beyond that, we just don't know anything about it. So you have to use your imagination. He was recreated for us by about 2.5 years ago by one of the present-day descendants of the Powhatans. Today in Virginia, we do have 8 tribes. that are descendants of the Powhatans and who have reservations. I was asking about the faces that he put on the poles, and I was told they're just generic. You don't know who they are or what they are. Now, I'm going to walk you through one of the Yehagans. If we sit in there, it's a little humid today. I don't want anybody passing out. So after we walk through, I'll tell you how they're made and how they're used. But before we go in, just like to tell you that the name of the Powhatan house is called a Yehagan. It's a single family dwelling, okay? The size of your Yehagan was determined by how large your family was, or if you were a Warwansk or a Warwanska, a male chief or a lady chief. And ladies back then in the Indian world and the African world, women did have some status. Not really so in the English world. About the only thing the English ladies might be able to determine for themselves is who they married. So please follow me and we'll walk through that.
Detergent in the 1600s is actually made from ashes.
What type of ashes were you using?
What's that?
What type of ashes?
I'm not a great, I don't have great ashes at this point. I've just got the ashes out of our fireplace. As Ed was pointing out, they're not always the best ashes. The people in the time period did have different opinions about it. If they could get it, they might use willow ashes, they talked about.
White oak is good.
Yeah, to make a really strong bleach, or different, they thought it had different qualities. Basically though, it seems to be a pretty slow acting bleach. People would soak their linen in this ash solution for weeks for the initial bleaching. So you're turning the linen from that gray color to this bright white. Bright white was how people, if you spent any money on your linen at all, you wanted it to be this really shiny white. I have this great picture here. This is a copy of a picture from the 1500s, and it shows you these women who are bleaching the linen out in the fields there. You can see all the process. They're heating up water, they're soaking it, they're beating it with these bats. And they've got a great stream with fresh water running through there, so they can rinse it out really well too.
What else did they use for laundry?
To clean it,
yeah.
They would use soap. So you could, once you soaked it in the bleach, you could use soap to finish it off. They also use urine actually as a bleach. You've probably heard that before. So it's got ammonia in it, so it can also have an effect on your stains. And there were books starting in the 1700s. I don't know if there are any that go back to the 1600s, but starting in the 1700s, middle of the 1600s, not necessarily before Jamestown. There were books that had advice on how to remove different kinds of stains. Written in English, and there's some that are earlier than Jamestown, but they're from other countries in Europe. So people were concerned how to get these stains out. Most of the advice for stains and for cleaning and scrubbing is for your linen shirt, your underwear. And in your outer clothing, you might use other methods like fuller's earth you can use. It's a type of stone that will remove grease spots. It's basically the same stuff that's in kitty litter is made out of. So you crush that up, put it on your wool clothes. Try to get the stains out.
I bet you they do much to the skin of the stuff they use to clean.
They didn't think about how it affected their skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these ladies are all, you have their bare hands out in this lye, and yeah, I just know from my minimal exposure out here to lye soap, it will do things to your skin.
Yeah.
So they must have dealt with that. I wonder too if that's why the bats are so important, right? Because if you're using the bats to beat the clothes, you don't have to touch it as much. But that is kind of the long history of laundry, is nasty, puckery skin. Imagine doing this in the winter too, wading down in the streams, and people commented on that in the past. Laundresses with legs that were blue from walking out of these cold streams. One historian that I read, though, thinks that laundresses might have had some freedoms. They're often really described as being really muscular, and they would travel around in groups, these groups of women who didn't stay in their homes. They would travel from place to place, picking up the laundry, taking it out to the places where they would wash it. And the establishment didn't really like that in the Middle Ages. They thought women should be in their homes. I hear these women are out traveling around in gangs. So maybe they had some freedoms that they compensated a little bit for some of their trouble.
Exactly. Yeah,
Some loading and firing. Imagine how this must have been with arrows flying at you. You probably you may get 1 to only 2 shots a minute, if that. Okay, putting about a 1/4 teaspoon of gunpowder into the pan, and once this powder ignites, it sends a spark through the vent hole into the breech. As I cast the weapon about, I'll pour in the main powder charge, which will be ignited, sending the ball out of the weapon. At this point, you place your round ball into the weapon, which I'm not really doing. We don't want our palisade looking like Swiss cheese at the end of the day. I'm going to ram that shot down to the breech. Pack it down good. Return the scouring stick. At this point, the weapon is pretty much loaded. Placing the lit match into the serpentine, which just holds that match in place. That's what we have. We're going to guide that match down, make sure the match is going to hit its mark, and we're good to go. Folks, ready? Be sure to cover your ears. Present your piece. Give. Fire. There we go. Folks, welcome to James Fort. That concludes our demonstration. Enjoy your visit.
Very good. Yeah. As an Englishman, yeah, you'd be feeling the same way. It's hot. It's too hot. Englishmen come from a much cooler climate. So you're beginning to fade because it's so warm out there. Maybe it isn't time for your duty to shift yet, but we can't have you falling out from heat stroke out there on the walls. So the captain of the watch, having noticed that, making his rounds, Hawk puts it in here, grabs me or Sammy, we go out, we relieve you, you can come back into the fort guard, recover from that heat, and go from there. That way we never leave the defense of the fort too weak. We've always got someone on guard 24 hours a day. And that's very, very important. They're also going out on campaign against pounding.
Because each one is
of all the people that came over, so we know how many came over.
They didn't
and
break it out by
They didn't
ship.
break it down ship from ship, yeah. And we have all the names of the first guys that come over. Yeah, they did not break it down. It's possible. They probably didn't while they're at sea, but it's possible. We never will know those details.
I didn't say it, see. Yeah, they stopped really explode.
Yeah, maybe when they stopped. Well, and we do know that.
You know, every time they stop, they go, I want on the big ship. I'm tired of being on this little.
They could have taken turns.
That's right.
Yeah, it depends on who you are. Some of the guys may be able to get themselves switched to a different ship. Other guys may not have had those connections.
Politics and
Yeah, even back then.
doubloons.
But we actually do know a few people were definitely switched to different ships to break them up. There's a group of people that were accused of mutiny very early on.
Wow.
In the English Channel.
They didn't even get out of the
barely
English
got out of
They
Channel.
barely got out of England. Well, this is what happened.
I want to go home.
They got into the English Channel. That's exactly what it was. There were bad storms and winds that kept the ships right there. The winds were blowing north, and as you know, they want to go south.
Right.
So they decided to anchor and wait for the winds to change. And the port they left from was about a day's sail away. And in some cases, for the weeks that they were there, the winds were so bad that it would be dangerous to sail anyways.
Right.
But again, also they have to be ready to catch the wind. As far as they know, the wind could change the next day. They can't look up on their weather app when that stuff's going to get out of there, right? So as far as they know, it could change. But some of the other passengers who had maybe never been on boats before, ships, they didn't really understand this. They were wondering why they are on a ship, and they end up staying in the English Channel for about 5 weeks.
Oh my gosh, really?
Waiting for the winds to become favorable.
Since it's only took 6 months.
Well, exactly, and that's why a few of the guys were accused of mutiny because they were speaking their minds. They were like, why don't we go to shore? You know, and they probably weren't really trying to mutiny.
It was like
per
being on the
se.
tarmac.
They were
But,
just-
well, exactly. It's the same. Yeah, it's the modern day equivalent. It certainly is.
they were just
And guess
being-
who the ringleader of this mutiny was? John Smith.
John Smith.
Oh,
Troublemaker.
really?
Yeah. He was known for being kind of arrogant, and also for speaking his mind and his opinion, even when he shouldn't, and even when he has no place to, which he
Right.
didn't. On the ships,
Boy.
the captains of the ships are in charge, and Christopher Newport especially has the final say in anything. And he really had no place to tell him otherwise, but he
I've never
supposedly
been
did.
accused
And
of that. Speaking my mind and being a troublemaker. I wouldn't.
most of the crew are volunteers, but the guys that are in charge.
come under attack and you can get turned quickly and get your first volley off, you're good. You take out the enemy sail. Now you can get away. And that's all they want to do. They have no interest in sinking the enemy ship, taking whatever the enemy ship is on the enemy ship. All they want to do is get their cargo delivered. That's their mission. And the people on board are part of the cargo. Notice I said cargo delivery. Delivering people as part of the cargo to the New World. It's Captain Newport's mission. So anyway, you can go on board all three ships. We have interpreters that will tell you about each ship. And any questions you have, I'm sure they can answer. If not,
Can I take a picture inside?
oh yeah, it's all hands-on stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can jam in there when you talk to the interpreter.
need to go sideways. Push your whole body weight into it and turn it that way. I got nothing here we can do sideways, so we have to do it this way. You're okay. Oh, you can stop.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Anybody else want to try?
A very important tool to bring with you to the new world. Bigger augers, bigger bits. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's like the first bit?
That's called a spoon bit. Spoon bit. And the beauty about that is it works both ways. But with an auger bit, clockwise to make the hole, and then you got to put it in reverse to get it out. That means you crank it the other way. But even the ancient Egyptians had a not quite a brace in the bit. They would use a bow drill. Have a pointy stick, put a rock on top of it to hold it, put the bow here and just crank back and forth. Keep putting the pressure on.
Cool. You want to try? Alright, scoot in.
Come on. You're going to go right there. Right hand on top. And push down and crank, turn. That's something we do every half hour.
Okay.
Quarter past and a quarter till the hour. Those are my next seats for three-legged stools, but they're too light. The one's already cracked. It's not oak, I know that. No, it's too light. It's not pine either. I'm going to have to ask maintenance what they gave me. I asked for 2 to make seats. You give me those things. It's like a coffee table.
Well, I think there's other people.
As it would have been in those days, because outside the wall, every tree, every bush will be gone. So you can see at least 100 yards, possibly 200 yards in some directions. Now he's got all these armed troops upstairs. If anybody's getting anywhere near the wall, they can just look out the window and see it. The people in each corner of the fort. That rounded bastion that goes outside the edge of the wall. You can see clearly every inch of ground surrounding the thing. So actually it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I was just curious because it would seem to me that they want it more centrally located, you know, being such an important man.
They can also use it if somebody else
that's
comes.
true. They can also use it as a place for fun.
The fort is not that big.
Yeah, true.
This fort is a little bit smaller than the original, but it's still not going to be a big fort. But for protection, you want a clear view.
Right.
And the Indians' arrows will only go about 40 yards. Our weapons require 100 yards. So we're very well protected from that. And of course, in each corner there are also small cannons.
Yes.
So if a ship is coming up the river, we can shoot it down, or we can move the cannons out in the middle there.
Wow, look at that.
Which is technically not called a cannon. It has to be bigger before it becomes a cannon. It's got to grow up.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Themselves at war with the natives. With the arrival of the military governor, Lord De La Warr, a guard detail would be assembled each day in front of this building. And it's the men themselves, these common tradesmen, that are providing their own guard detail or security force. Who do we expect to fight for control of this newfound land? The Spanish. We wind up at war with the Powhatan Indians, who are using primitive weaponry, stone-tipped arrows and war clubs. This is what the settlers are dealing with as far as weapons go. Primitive weapons, feel free to handle them if you folks like. Pass this arrowhead around. If you'd like to take a look at that. This is where the extra arms would be stored. New arrivals, Indian settlers arriving here in Virginia would probably make a stop at the guardhouse for issuing of armor, bandoliers, or your proper accoutrements, and a weapon, because each man will be called up for guard duty. Now, for the most part, these weapons that you see here are, for the most part, you have the matchlock musket. This is the primary weapon of the settler. It's a weapon made up of 4 moving parts, weighing up to about 22 pounds. The weapon fires a projectile called a round shot. And I'll let you guys pass around all shot. Hold out your hand. I'll drop it in your hand so you can feel the weight of it. Armor as well would be issued to the men. This armor will protect you from those stone-tipped arrows, which is the primary weapon of the Powhatan. Now, it's in the first week of settlement that artillery is used against the natives. The artillery, which we have an example of outside the fort here, is a swivel gun. Anybody get to see the artillery demonstration this morning? Well, out on the ships, swivel guns were mounted on the deck rail of a ship. They could also be mounted on land carriage. It's in the first week of settlement that the fort is attacked by a group of natives, a group of warriors from the neighboring village of Paspahegh, which is just about 3 miles up the James. The settlers fire a couple rounds of bar shot into the tree line just over their heads, just to scare them. And that it did. Rain limbs down on top of their head. And what bar shot is a 3-pound ball split in half and connected by a bar, or a length of chain, about 2 foot of chain. When the gun is fired, it sends those 2 balls spinning by that chain, and it's going to cut a swath through anything in its path. It was mainly designed to cut the rigging out of a ship, or the sails or the mast, to damage that, to stop the ship. What they did was fired it over these Powhatans' head, knocking limbs out of the trees. That'll be the first and only time the Powhatans attack the fort head on. Now, the fort that you see today is built pretty close to the scale of the original. Now, has anybody been to historic Jamestown yet? That's right next door. That is a National Park Service museum and historic site. That is the site of the original fort, which was discovered in 1993. Any questions, folks, or curiosities about anything you see? Feel free to ask, look about. If you see anything that sparks your interest, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
You got one question here.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Why?
Well, we'll stay right